So I'm presenting today on behalf of my colleagues in the Wetlands Unit, Mike Ronan and Matthew Griffiths, as well as Liz Owen and Dennis Arkey from Jerrigan Eco Services, whose their plan has provided a lot of the information that I'll be presenting today. Before I begin, though, I'd like to recognise the other collaborators that we've had on this project. So that involves our director who supported this project from DESI, as well as Alluvium, who provided a lot of the time and content in the scientific synthesis statement that I'll be talking about that goes along with this type of work, as well as colleagues from DESI who have applied this in the O'Connell Basin, as well as in the Gulf catchment. And then yeah, that's it. So just some of them don't have photos available online, which is why they don't have pictures up there. So humans value the aquatic ecosystems of the Great Barrier Reef for the various biophysical, social and economic reasons, but humans, as we know, also are the primary drivers of pressures on these different values, primarily from land use changes, development, things like that, that are putting pressures on these aquatic ecosystems. And so to manage some of these pressures, the whole of system values-based framework was developed, that addresses some of these issues, and it's a stepwise holistic management framework that links the biophysical environment with the human beneficiaries and their values. So it's a stepwise process that emphasizes the importance of involving the people who use and value the aquatic ecosystems in planning and management, while also appreciating the intrinsic values of the areas. And so it starts by identifying the different parts of your system and how it works and how those work together to generate ecosystem services and then that are then valued and used by beneficiaries. The framework includes a comprehensive list of ecosystem services that links to CICES, which is the common international classification for ecosystem services. So if you have any interest in that, you can go online and click on this framework and work your way through the ecosystem services. And it's hosted online to allow it to be dynamic and updated with new information as it becomes available. And it can be used at multiple scales to generate an understanding of how the overall system works. And this is just a different representation of that linear framework. So it's just showing that your biophysical components and processes work together to generate those services that are then used and valued by your beneficiaries. And so we have been working extensively with Jerrigan Eco Services, which is a First Nations-owned environmental organisation, to apply this framework in the Russell Catchment. The Russell Catchment is located in North Queensland, near Innisfail and Cairns, and the previous Russell Catchment Sustainability Plan was developed in 2020 and used a previous version of the whole of system values-based framework, and was community-led and incorporated cultural aspirations as well as the values of the broader community living and working within the Russell. And this plan is being revised to incorporate new information that has become available about the Russell catchment, to expand as well to include the sea country. So the plan now includes information about the reefs and the islands that are off of the coast, and it recognises the integration of the entire system and of the reef. So it isn't primarily focused on land-based activities and incorporates the sea here. So this is an overview of the broader project of applying the whole of system values-based framework. So the information in the beige is the type of data and information that goes into developing these outputs on the right here. So these reports and data types are used to develop a technical report or a scientific synthesis that is very detailed and includes information about the different parts of your system. So it might be the different plants and animals that are found there, the different processes, ecosystem services, pressures. It's very detailed, which can then be used to inform some of your higher level catchment plans and sea country plans or investment plans and monitoring plans that don't necessarily need to be bogged down in all of that detail. It's linked to those plans can be linked to your scientific synthesis, but can also be created a bit more dynamically as different priorities come up from funding and things like that. As well as includes detailed ecosystem services tables and summary tables as well. But I'm going to focus on just the template that we've developed for the ecosystem services tables that will hopefully be available soon for use by others. So this is a very detailed template, and it might be hard to read. I've tried to make it as large font as possible, but I do realize that it might be difficult to see. But I'll just walk you through the template and what's included in it. And so it starts very basic with the title of the ecosystem service that you are looking to manage or implement in your, reinstate in your catchment if it's not there already. And you can't see it up there, but that's in lay terminology. So I'll get to it towards the end, but if you are familiar with the CICES classification system, you know then that it's very technical and doesn't necessarily make sense to a non-expert. And so the idea is to include a title that is accessible to a non-technical expert to be able to use this framework and understand their catchment. You provide a brief description of that service, again, in lay terminology, but then also identify the different beneficiaries of that service. So that could be government, that could be traditional owners, that would be anybody who would receive a benefit from the existence of this ecosystem service. You then lay out your components. So for instance, for crops and horticulture, which is what this example is about, that could include your individual banana trees, that could include soil, that could include anything that is relevant to having agriculture and horticulture that is successful and productive. It also, it also includes the processes that are required to generate this service. So for horticulture, an example process might be pollination. It describes the social, environmental and economic outcomes that you're hoping to achieve by managing for this ecosystem service, as well as listing a key summary of key pressures on this ecosystem service. So for instance, for fruit and horticulture, it might be Panama disease causing impacts on bananas. But there also is a section for a summary of pressures from this ecosystem service that applies pressures on other ecosystem services or intrinsic values. So for instance, that might be pesticides, and that's recognizing that the entire system is integrated. So managing for one ecosystem service and getting the benefits from that could have an impact on other ecosystem services. So there might be flow-on effects by applying pesticides on other services that are important to people in the catchment. It then provides an opportunity to outline the responses to the pressures to this ecosystem service and from this ecosystem service. And I didn't go into it in detail, but the whole of system values-based framework has a high-level list of different types of management interventions, and that's what's organised under here. And then you might not be able to read it from here, but it includes the verbatim taxonomy from CICES, so that's where your very technical language comes in here. So you can link back to that if somebody is a technical expert and is interested in that. So some key learnings that we've gotten from this project so far is that we've got some great feedback that the framework is holistic and comprehensive. It's a good guide for guiding conversations with stakeholders to identify what is important to them in their environment, in their system. It also is identified that stakeholder engagement is scale and context specific, and so it might not be necessary or possible to speak to everybody, and that's okay in some instances. And it's beneficial to separate the technical planning and investment plans, as I mentioned earlier, about being able to respond to emerging priorities if everything's not all tied up in that very detailed scientific synthesis document that accompanies this. But some areas for improvement involve, it can be difficult to know how to identify the components and processes based on the things that people identify as what they value. So being able to take that a step back and identifying the biophysical parts of the system. It can also be difficult to link the components and processes to your ecosystem service to know what actually is working together in the system to give you what you value. Governance needs to be built into plans, and it's currently missing from the framework, so we're putting guidance in for that. And it's difficult to know how much detail is needed and what to do in places where key information is not available, and this became really relevant in the Gulf where this was applied. They're just data that's missing, and so nobody has that information, so there's gaps in trying to apply this framework. So just a summary, the framework is dynamic, it's always evolving and regularly integrated with other frameworks. It's holistic and can be applied in different contexts and resourcing capacity. There's guidance material, templates and case studies that will be available as the project progresses, and so that's coming out. And there's interest from diverse groups in applying this at multiple scales. Thank you.